Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al-Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to On the Middle East, Al-Monitor's podcast on the big and interesting stories in the region. My name is Ambryn Zaman, and today I'll once again be focusing on Syria, where interim President Ahmad al-Sharaa faced his biggest crisis since seizing power in December, as the country descended into sectarian violence last week. Rights groups say more than 1,000 people, most of them Alawite civilians, died when armed Sunni groups attacked their villages. The government has blamed the bloodletting on what it calls remnants of the Assad regime. For a while, it seemed Sharaa had lost all control. With us here to discuss this dire turn is French academic Fabrice Balanche, who has written numerous books on Syria and spent several weeks travelling throughout the country soon after Assad was ousted. Fabrice lived in Syria for long years, including in the Alawite heartland. Welcome to our program, Fabrice.
Thank you, Amberine, for your invitation. I'm very glad to be with you.
In December, you wrote a very important paper for the Washington Institute of Near East Policy, warning that there could be large-scale massacres against the Alawite population in Syria. And lo and behold, that is what happened. We witnessed terrible bloodshed last week. And unfortunately, even as you were delivering your warnings, very few people in the media, in Western governments, were actually paying attention. Let me start by asking you, why? Why was there so little attention paid to the Alawites when the writing was on the wall?
So I think that's because so many people were very enthusiastic about al-Sharaa. He took the power without exaction, without blood, as we could expect after 13 years of civil war. So now it's a first big massacre, and people are a little bit disturbing about that because we see the original face, the real face of Mr. Sharaa. But does it mean somebody who spent 20 years with a terrorist organization, from Al-Qaeda to Hayat al-Sham? And people have hope that he could be de-radicalized, and it's not true. That's why I think that few people pay attention about the massacre, try to minimize. It's not Ahmad al-Sharaa, it's irregular groups, radical groups, and it's some people told also that it's come from a white insurrection. It's not true because the problem started on beginning of March in Latakia, where an Alawite neighborhood have been surrounded by HTS, and many people have been killed. The day after, in Dalié, in the mountain, you have an Alawite villages, which is a holy place for the Alawites. The name is Dalié. HTS struck this village. And this village was not a village with many former officers. It was a religious village, so it didn't support the Assad regime. And so it was a direct target against the Alawite religion. And of course, we have seen after a resistance in the Alawite mountain against the Islamists and the jihadists from HTS who attacked the villages. And so this narrative is not very popular because many people are taking the argument of Damascus, and they are lying, of course, but it was an Alawite provocation.
Well, of course, as you say, the government is denying responsibility, and the narrative, as you put it, is that it was Assad remnants, Assad loyalists who instigated all of this. How can we be so sure that these people who attack these villages, these Alawites, are actually from the HTS, or that they were acting under orders from Ahmad al-Sharaa? Because what the government keeps saying is that these are groups that have no affiliation with the HTS, who are acting independently. How can you be so sure that they are with the HTS, Fabrice?
HTS was around the Alawite mountain. They had the police station in Tartus, in Latakia, in Banyas, in Hama, in Homs. And if the groups coming from Afrin, from Jarablus, does it mean the Syrian National Army want to reach the Alawite mountain? They have to cross the area controlled by HTS. So with the permission of HTS. Secondly, you have massacre in Banyas, in the Syrian coast. It's not at the center of the mountain, and it was a terrible massacre in Banyas under the eyes of HTS. How he could not prevent this massacre? It's just too few examples. I can give you also example of villages close to Latakia. Snowball, for instance, between Latakia and Jableh, it was a terrible massacre. For HTS, it will be very easy to prevent such a massacre, to prevent the irregular group to come to the Syrian coast. But they haven't done it. My feeling is that it was organized from Damascus to punish the Alawites as people who were with the former regime, and also because they are considered like by the new Islamist government.
You say that, but it's caused him huge damage and left him very, very vulnerable. Of course, one thing we have heard from a lot of our sources in Syria is that the reason the government was looking the other way while these attacks were occurring, and they were, nowhere near the sort of size and scope and brutality of what we witnessed last week. The reason the government was looking the other way was to allow people to kind of let off steam. That's how it was explained to me, because there's no transitional justice system in place. So this was a way of allowing people I guess, to avenge the horrors of the Assad regime, but that somehow it spun out of control. Clearly, Sharaa looked very weak, didn't he, when the massacres reached these mind-boggling, horrific proportions. So obviously, it's now in his interest to see this end, wouldn't you say?
So you could have some vengeance, local vengeance, but what we have seen, it's fighters coming from abroad who participated to the massacre. Uyghur, Chechen, G people who are in Idlib with al-Sharaa, and very useful for Sharaa because they are good fighters, very efficient. And at the local level, what I know in Banyas, for instance, but it was not the local population of Banyas who suffered from a massacre during the civil war, who wanted to take vengeance. It was people from jihadist group from Idlib. Sharaa is weak. It's not so weak. He's weak because he controlled just 50% of Syria. South of Syria is under the control of Ahmad the Sunni faction, the Druze. Northeastern Syria, it's the Syrian Democratic Forces. North of Aleppo, it's still the Syrian National Army. So yes, he don't have so much money because until now you have still US sanction who prevent Qatar or other Gulf country to support him. He has the means to prevent such massacre. If we take the example of northeastern Syria, for instance, controlled by the Syrian Democratic Forces, after the collapse of Daesh, of the Islamic State, we haven't seen a massacre in the area. And the Kurdish authority explained me that they prevented any vengeance, any massacre. And it was very peaceful, but people wanted to take vengeance against people who were with Daesh, but it was strictly prohibited. And why Sharaa is not able to do the same thing?
That's a very interesting question. And being that some of these groups at least traveled from the areas under Turkish occupation, could we not ask the same question about Turkey. Why didn't they do something to stop it? Or do you believe they were not in a position to do that? It was really down to Sharaa.
Yes, I don't know why Turkey didn't internet. It's difficult to say because this massacre is not in favor of Sharaa, of course, because he could stop the normalization between Sharaa and Europe and US, and it's not in the interest of Turkey to see Sharaa isolated and without financial support from abroad, because it's not Turkey who will support him. By the contrary, Turkey want to benefit from the reconstruction of Syria.
Just days after the massacre, we saw the commander-in-chief of the Syrian Democratic Forces sign a surprise agreement with Sharaa, and in a way almost rescue him from this disaster. Do you think that this agreement has in fact allowed Sharaa some breathing space and helped restore his credibility, legitimacy? And where do we go from here?
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al-Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al-Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
This agreement between Mazloum Kobane and Sharaa give to Sharaa a brief. Of course, after the massacre, he showed that he's able to reconcile with the Kurds, to unify Syria by negotiation. So it's a good point for him, and that's why probably he did this agreement quickly. For Mazloum, also, I think that he has some pressure from US to find an agreement with Damascus. Of course, the peace talk between Erdogan and PKK help also to have a kind of normalization with Damascus. But frankly, this agreement, it's just symbolic. Nothing changed on the ground. I think it's just a non-aggression agreement between Mazloum Kobane and Sharaa. When you read the treaty, the first line, we are going to organize a mixed commission for the integration of northeastern Syria in Syria, etc., etc. Okay, we know what does it mean, a mixed commission, but negotiation during years, problem with any details, and we have seen the constitutional committee in Geneva between the Syrian opposition and the regime. Nothing was done. The dialogue, even the dialogue between the Kurdish party, nothing was done also. So it's just for Mazloum to win time, because he has problem with the Arab population who live in northeastern Syria. More than 60% of the population is Arab, especially Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, Souf Hasakeh, and he's afraid to see this population to move on the Sham side. When Bashar al-Assad fell in December, you have demonstration in Raqqa. People asked to join, of course, the new Syria, and of course Mazloum refused to let HTS or other groups to come to his area. So I think that for Mazloum, he need to wait 6 months, 1 year, because at least after 6 months we will see that Syria is not on a good way. We will see the enthusiasm about al-Sharaa will disappear. You have many economic problems. He shows his real face with the massacre. So No, the Druze or other groups will not leave the weapons because they know very well what could happen if they are not well protected. We will see the Islamization of the country, the dictator. And I think that Mazloum probably expect that the Arab population who live under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces will realize that Syria is not going on the good way, and probably it's better to stay under the control of the Syrian Democratic Forces because the life is better.
Well, clearly it would be so if US forces remained, but that's the big question. We don't know whether they will or not. But getting back to the Alawites and Sharaa, I want to ask you once again, just to make it clear for our audience, do you believe that Sharaa anticipated that things would get as bloody as they did?
So of course, he anticipated. I call with many friends who live in Latakia, Tartus, and they told me that 2 weeks ago they have seen many reinforcements coming from Damascus and Idlib to Latakia and Tartus with very heavy weapons. So something was in preparation. Something was in preparation. And if we remember what happened in Idlib during the civil war, it was the same kind of massacre. The massacre of the Alawites in Jisr al-Shugul and in the village of Zahra, close to an Alawite village close to Jisr al-Shugul. They killed all the population who didn't succeed to escape. It was the same thing for the Shia villages close to Idlib, Fua and Kefar Aya, who was surrounded and they succeed to leave the area, but after a very bloody fight. So it was expected because the fighter of Sharaa are criminals. They killed civilians during the war.
Okay, but I mean, what I'm saying is, given the immense fallout from this internationally, domestically, the blow it's dealt to his image, why would he deliberately allow something like that to happen, given, as I said, what it's done to his credibility and how it weakened him? It makes no sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because Sharaa has to have a good image with the West for the lifting of the sanction, but at the same time he has to control Syria, and he thinks that it's by showing the hard power to show how he's violent that people will follow him, will respect him. It was like Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad had a nice narrative with the West. I'm going to make reform, etc., etc. But at the same time, for the Syrian people, it was very hard, and he destroyed any opposition by violence. So it's something in the West that we don't understand. Oh, he make promise, he want to make a constitution, he want to protect the minority, etc., etc. So we make the mistake to believe him. If he want to control the country, it will be by violence, and he has to make an example with the Alawites, a bloody example with the Alawites, to get the submission of the other population in Syria.
So do you think he succeeded in making that example and that the Alawite threat, quote unquote, is over?
I think that many people are very afraid about Sharaa. I don't think that we will see many demonstrations against his new power because, of course, people are very afraid today. People who still have weapons, like the Kurds or the Druze, and who are protected, the Kurds by US or the Druze by Israel, because we have this statement from Netanyahu 2 weeks ago that if Sharaa want to go want to attack the Druze, Israel will react. So these people who have weapons and who are protected, of course, they will not leave the weapon. But the people who are under the control of HDS today, they will not revolt against this power because they know the result.
And that includes the Alawites.
Yes.
Fabrice, thank you very much for joining us today. and I hope the future of Syria will be less bleak than you described.
I would like, but I'm very, very pessimistic for the future of Syria.
And this brings us to the end of this week's episode. It was pretty depressing. Thanks for tuning in, and do read our exhaustive coverage of the Middle East on our website www.al-monitor.com. Goodbye.